Hi weaving friends, today we are talking about supplementary fringes. What are they? Well, I don't know if there's really such a thing as a supplementary fringe, but it made sense to me to call it that because it is bringing in something extra, to add something extra to the piece. So it's a great technique for if you finish a piece of weaving, you either have some fringe or you don't have some fringe. For this particular sampler, I do have some fringe. And you think, well, I think I could jazz that up a little bit by adding in some extra color, some different texture. I just think it's not quite there, and I want to just, take it up a little level, just a little bit. And so we're going to add some extra fringe in after the piece is already off the loom. Now, if you're wondering, well, how am I going to pick colors? How do I know if it's going to look all right on the piece or not? Well, one suggestion would be to have a look at the colors that you've actually used throughout the piece and try and pick one or two of those colors or more and use them as inspiration. So for example, when I just cast my eye over this piece, one color that stands out to me is the yellow because it just kind of pops on that burgundy background there. The blue also stands out. This green also stands out just because I really like it. But the yellow was what popped out to me first. And so I might say, okay, well, I want to, bring a bit more of that yellow or something similar to my fringe. And then I know that it will coordinate really well. That's one way of doing it. Another way is going, well, I've got this other yarn that I really like that I didn't incorporate into the piece, and I'm going to incorporate it into the fringe instead. Or maybe you use one of the yarns that you have used in the piece, the exact same yarn, same color, everything, and incorporate that into the fringe. Your choice, depends on what you want to do. It's really good to be able to have a sampler to practice this technique on, because that can show you like what sort of thicknesses you should be looking at, what sort of intervals you should be looking at for adding in the supplementary fringe. Let's just get going with this, shall we? I have just a ball of Noro Ito yarn. The reason that I'm using this is because, well, first of all, the colors. So the colors go pretty well with a lot of these colors in my sampler. And also they're really interesting colors. So I know that they're going to look nice in a fringe. And also I chose this one because once you buy a ball of this, it is quite expensive, but then it never, ever runs out. All right, well, it does run out eventually, but I've had this one for ages. It really lasts a long time. All right, so another thing that you're going to need is a crochet hook, pair of scissors, and a book. Now the book, or some sort of book-like object, a piece of wood, whatever you want to use, you just want it to be around the size that you are going to have your additional fringe in. A hardcover book is really good, but not absolutely necessary, as long as the book's not really bendy. I'm using this superb Strickler book, American Woven Coverlets, love it, one of my favorite books. So then you will be deciding how long do you want the fringe. Do you want the supplementary fringe to be the same length as the fringe you've already got? Do you want it to be longer? Do you want it to be shorter? So these are the kind of decisions that you would be making. On my sampler, I have a piece that hasn't been finished in any way except to just trim the ends of the fringes there. So I haven't knotted them, I haven't hem stitched, that's all just raw fringe there. Now it doesn't have to be that way, and we're going to have a look at that idea in a moment of a different scenario. But first of all, we're going to use this raw fringe. I'm thinking that I probably want my fringe, my supplementary fringe, to be around the same length as the fringe that I've already got here. So I'm going to just measure that out, but I want to measure it doubled over. Okay, so I want to lay some of that yarn that I'm going to bring in, and then I want to loop it over. And this is just an approximate, right? It doesn't have to be exact at the moment. And when I loop it over, I'm allowing a little bit at the top, a bit extra, because I'm going to be doing a loop, a kind of knot, and so I need that extra length. All right, so let's see, that's about as long as I want it. And so if I grab my book, well, if I took it lengthways on the book's too long for what I need. But if I take it widthways, that's not too bad. That's almost about right. It's a little bit longer, wider than I want the length of the fringe to be, but that's okay because I'd rather have just that little bit of extra length. Anyway, it gives me extra trimming length, and then I know it's not going to end up too short anyhow. All right, so I've got my length figured out, and I'll use the book in a moment, but the next thing that I want to figure out is what kind of intervals am I going to place this Noro yarn in, and how many strands of it? Well, I could do anything really. Like this is, you can do it completely random if you want to, just put bits here and there and everywhere, or you can do it in regular intervals if you like that kind of look. So looking at my yarn here, I think that I'll bunch off 4 from my fringe, and then I will pop in maybe a group of 2 right here. I could put in 4 as well. Just bear in mind that if you're using a thick yarn, that is going to be a bit of a bunch there. So it's also going to make a thicker knot there. So just bear that in mind. The Noro yarn that I have is thicker than the warp yarn, the fringe yarn that's already there. So I reckon I'll try 2 strands to begin with, and I'll just see how that goes. So I might as well measure out a few while I'm here. So I'm just going to hold that yarn and take it around, not taking it really tightly or anything. Wind some off the ball as I go. I'll be linking this yarn underneath if you're interested in checking that out, the Noro yarn. Okay, I've got 4 strands there, and I'm finishing off at the bottom where I started, and I'm just going to cut that. And then as I hold the top ones, I can also cut the other strands at the bottom. And then I've got my length if I pinch it in the middle. Now, what did I say? I wanted 2 strands. So if I want 2 strands, well, I'm going to be doubled over. So I actually just want 1 strand of the yarn, but I'm going to have it doubled. Now, how I'm going to bring that in is, remember I said I wanted a repeating pattern of 4 of my warp threads or my fringe, and then 2 of my Noro. Okay, so I'm going to count off 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I can separate out the fringe there so that I can see what my weft is doing and how I'm going to get in there with my crochet hook. Now the size of the hook is not extremely important. It's more important that it's comfortable and easy enough for you to use. So I've actually got a size 10 here, which 5.75 millimeter, and it's a bit thick really, to be honest. I would rather have a smaller gauge hook, but this is just the one that I had hanging around my studio, so it's the one I'm going to go with. Now another choice that you have when you come in is you're either going to go under the first weft with your crochet hook, or you can go up to the second weft. Your choice. I'm going to go through the second and see how that turns out. So now I've got my crochet hook in. I want to bring in my loop of supplemental fringe, pop it into my hook and put a little bit of tension on that as I pull it through, and there's a gap that it's going to go through. As I pull it through, I still want to keep a hold of the tails of the yarn, but I'm making a bit of a loop, see? So once I've got that loop, I can take my hook out and get my fingers in there to keep the loop. And then I want to bring those tails through the loop. I'm doing it nice and slowly for you, and we'll get a different angle of this as well, if this is not the best angle for you yet. Now I'm going to slowly cinch that up so that it tightens. Okay, there is my first one. So now I'm going to count off another 4 of my existing warp threads. So the ones that I've already counted off, they're finished. I'll pop them over to the side. My supplementary is actually a lot longer than my existing fringe, but that's fine. We can trim it up. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab one of my pieces of Noro and make a loop. Then I'm going to grab my work and I'll look at the first weft, but I'll go underneath that and I'll come up underneath, and I'll come up on top of the second weft. There we go. And so I'm in between those bunches of 4 for the warp, the existing warp. And then I'll bring in my loop. Keep some tension on that. And slowly pull that through. Keeping the loop. And then once I've got the loop, I can let go, put my fingers in there and pull that through the loop, both strands through, and then tighten it up. All right, that's my second one. Now we'll do the third bunch. So first of all, I want to count out 4 of my existing fringe threads, and I want to count them in order, so I don't want to take some from over here and some from somewhere else. They're laid out in order and I'll just take them in order. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab a loop of my supplemental fringe. Okay, and then bring my crochet hook in and I'm going to go up to the second weft. There we go. Sorry if I'm obscuring the view a little bit there. You do kind of need to get your thumbs and fingers and everything in there. Okay, and then pull that through till you have a loop. And then I can put my tails through that loop. And then push that up to cinch it in. So now we've got three lots and we'll keep going. So count off another 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Grab my loop. Come in with my hook and come through on top of the second weft. Pull that through. And we have a loop. And we pop the tails through the loop and cinch it up. And then we can keep going right the way across. And if you run out of supplementary pieces of fringe, you can just make some more with your book and your scissors. It's very, very easy. 1, 2, 3, 4. By the way, if you like the look of this sampler, this is from my Pick Up Perfection class. So in that class we do a sampler, which is this lovely thing here. We use all different yarns and different patterns, and then we finish up with a really lovely pillow project. It's a really fun comprehensive class. So if you are wanting to get into pickup sticks, that is the class for you. And guess what? I will link to it down below. Yes, I will. So this is a quick and easy way to just add a little extra pizzazz when you feel like something's lacking. 3, 4. This would be a cool effect on like a bag. You know how you have those satchel bags, but you leave the tassels at the top? So the top of the bag folds over and it has tassels or fringe. And this would be a great technique for adding in something extra to that for additional interest. Or onto a shawl or all kinds of things. You know, sometimes that you have a shawl and you want more fringe than there naturally is. So that's another option, is to like fringe where there is no fringe on the side. Like on this piece, I would go up the side there. And I'd do the same thing. I would go in either 1 or 2 warp threads, because it would be warp threads this time, deep. But I'd use the exact same technique. All right, friends, I'll carry on bringing in the supplemental fringe for the rest of this piece. Then we will have a little chat afterwards about how you might like to finish off a fringe like this. And then we'll go on to the second part of the tutorial, which is bringing in a supplementary fringe when your fringe is already finished. You'll see what I mean when we get to that. What I would have done if this original fringe wasn't so short, if I didn't cut it so short when I made the sampler, I would have twisted these 2 fringes together. I think that would have looked awesome, because then you'd have like a candy stripe effect with the burgundy and the other colour. But I can't go back in time, so instead of doing that, I'm going to trim this, but I'm actually going to trim it not to the exact same length as the burgundy. I'm going to trim it a little bit longer just because I like the way that looks. You could do this with a rotary cutter if you want to get out your rotary cutter and mat if you have one, or otherwise just use some sharp scissors like I'm doing. And you can measure everything or you can eyeball it, whatever you like. So that is the supplementary fringe. Now let's have a look at what you can do with a fringe that's already finished. Same sampler, different end. So I've just turned it over. And so this is more of the gorgeous patterns that we do in the Pick Up Perfection class. Look at that texture there, isn't that just wonderful? That's just using different pickup patterns, different yarns, different arrangements, to get very, very different results. And they're all super cool. This one right here is so dimensional. So is this one. I don't know if the camera picks it up. I'm just reminded looking at it how cool it is. Anyway, I'm here to talk about the fringe, aren't I? So on this end, what I did was I took the warp ends and I just plaited them in groups. So if I wanted to bring in some more of this Noro yarn into this kind of situation where the fringe is actually already finished, but I'm thinking, well, I like the way it looks, but imagine if I had the Noro yarn in there as well with some plaited groups too. And look, because these are plaited, I have heaps of space in between them because they're pulled away from each other. So it's just perfect. It was meant to be. I was meant to come here and come back here and show you all how to do this. First thing I want to do is figure out how many of the original warp threads are in each plaited bunch. By the way, I say plaited, you might say braided, same thing. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Oh, I've got an odd number. I wonder if that's the same for each one. Let's see. Oh yeah, of course I've got an odd number because you use odd numbers for plaiting, groups of 3. Okay, so I'm not sure if I want as many as 9 because remember my Noro yarn is thicker. So I think I'll do groups of 6. I can then divide them into 2s to have my 3 groups to plait. What do you think? Sounds like a plan? Does to me. So I'm going to use the same method to actually make my supplementary fringe. Okay, and remember you don't have to have exact numbers because you can just come back and make more, and it's really easy to do so. Didn't cut that loop. Never mind, I'll just double it over and cut it now. Okay, so I wanted 6, but that's going to be, remember we're doubling them over when we loop them over, like this. So I'm not going to have 6 strands, I'm going to have 3 strands. That'll make 6 doubled over. Hope that makes sense. Okay, so double them over, just the same as I did before. And then I'll just have a look at what I've got at the bottom here. At my wefts. So I do have the blue weft here as part of the pattern, but then I've obviously woven a little bit of extra of the burgundy as the background. So it's the burgundy that I'm going to be using. So I could come up 1 or I could come up 2. Let's see. I'm just thinking about the blue pattern there, the dots. They're probably going to be obscured. So if this was an actual piece rather than a sampler, I'd be thinking, do I want that bottom row of blue dots to be obscured? Does it matter or does it not matter? I think at the moment it does not matter. So I'm going to go in the 2 weft threads deep, and then I'll take through my little bunch here. A few more threads this time, so it's no different really, you just keep the loop. It's just a few more threads to look out for, that's all. Make sure all your tails go through. And then we can cinch that up. Oh, and would you look at that? The bottom weft is not actually obscured. I thought it would be. Oh, that's nice. Okay, so now I've got my next bunch of 3 strands, which is going to make 6 doubled over. And then I'll do the same thing in the next gap. Going in to, where are we? 2 weft threads. take that through the loop. And then take the tails through the loop. I'm just going to do a couple so that I can get them plaited for you and show you what it's going to look like. Okay. Nice. If any of the individual ones seem a little bit loose, you can always give them a little extra tug individually. All right. So now comes the plaiting. So I'm just going to divide them into 3 groups. So I've got you see where I've got my 3 groups of 2 now. And you know what? I need something to hold this down. I don't know if the book's going to do it well enough. What else have I got that's heavy? I'll bring in the trusty laptop. That's more than heavy enough. Okay, now we're in business. And so I can just divide them. And you know, the reason that you want that weighted is because I sort of need to tension this while I'm plaiting it. If I tried to do that without something weighting it, then it'd be slipping all over the place. It'd be very frustrating. And then I can just start plaiting. Now, whether you plait overhand or underhand, whatever you normally do. And if you don't know how to plait, you must never have had a daughter. Or maybe it's time for you to learn. It's pretty easy. Okay, so I'm looking at my other plaits that I've got here already as a comparison for when I want to actually do my knot. So I want to have them around a similar size. I don't have to. Again, as I said, you can do things a little more randomly and, you know, have your knot longer or have it shorter. Do what you want. But I am going to, for the purpose of this video, have it around the same place. And I'm just going to do one simple overhand knot. And then before I really tighten it, I can compare it again and see, okay, when I tighten it, is it going to be around a similar length? And there we go. It's a little bit longer. It's okay. I don't mind. All right, so we'll do the next one as well. Divide it into 2s. And away we go. Okay, comparing again. And then twist that around, take my tails through, and I'm going to pull it down but not too far. And there we go. So I'm going to do the rest of these. I've only got 4 more spaces left, so it's not going to take me very long to do that, and then we can come back and have a look. So there you have it, friends, 2 different options for bringing in a supplemental fringe. Let me know in the comments what you think of this technique. Is this something that you think will help take your weaving to the next level? Is it something you'd like to incorporate? Do you like the way it looks? Whatever the case, I hope that you benefited from this tutorial, and until next time, happy weaving!